Regina Gagieva was a 22-year-old woman from Vladikavkaz, North Ossetia, with a bright future ahead of her. She was known for her kindness, her warm smile, and her enthusiasm for life. But behind that smile was a painful reality that few knew about. The life she had dreamed of, full of hope, love, and success, was overshadowed by a relationship that would ultimately cost her everything. Regina met her former husband when she was still in her late teens. She had just begun her studies in university and was excited about the future. It was at a local cafe, a place where friends often gathered after classes, that she first crossed paths with him. He was charming, confident, and seemed to know exactly how to make her feel special. At first, it seemed like a fairy tale. He complimented her on her beauty and intelligence. He made her laugh, and soon, she found herself drawn to him. They began spending more time together, enjoying each other's company. They would talk for hours, sharing dreams, fears, and everything in between. He listened attentively, and Regina felt like she had finally found someone who truly understood her. He was attentive, caring, and affectionate in the beginning, and Regina thought she had found the perfect partner. Their relationship quickly grew stronger, and it wasn't long before they were inseparable. He showered her with love, made her feel important, and introduced her to his world, his family, his friends, and his life. For Regina, it felt like the beginning of a beautiful chapter, one where she was loved and cherished. But as their relationship deepened, cracks started to appear. It began subtly, small comments that were brushed off as jokes. He would make remarks about how she should dress or who she should spend time with. At first, Regina shrugged it off, believing that he was just protective of her. However, the behavior began to escalate over time. He would get upset when she spent too much time with friends or talked to other men. The jealousy that was once subtle soon turned into a controlling obsession. He started dictating her every move, insisting she keep her phone on at all times, asking her where she was and with whom, and even showing up unexpectedly to check on her. At first, Regina tried to reason with him, explaining that she valued her independence and needed her space. But his behavior became more possessive. He would accuse her of being unfaithful, even when she hadn't given him any reason to believe it. The constant accusations began to wear her down, and Regina started feeling trapped, unsure of how to regain the freedom she once had. Despite the mounting tension in their relationship, Regina stayed. She thought she could change him, that with enough love and patience, he would understand her need for space. But things only worsened. The jealousy turned to anger, and anger turned to violence. Regina's friends and family began to notice the bruises, the red marks on her arms and face. She would make excuses, say she had bumped into something or had a bad fall, but deep down, they knew the truth. The first time he hit her, Regina was in shock. She had never imagined that someone who once seemed so loving could turn so violent. She tried to excuse it as a momentary lapse in judgment, but deep inside, she knew that it was the start of a dangerous pattern. He apologized afterward, promising he would never hurt her again, but the cycle of abuse had already begun. He would hurt her, apologize, and then hurt her again. Regina's self-esteem took a beating, and she started doubting herself. She believed his lies, thinking that maybe it was something she had done to provoke him. She thought if she just behaved differently, if she tried harder to please him, everything would get better. But no matter how much she tried to appease him, his anger and jealousy only grew. Over time, Regina began to feel isolated. She withdrew from her friends and family, afraid of their judgment or their reaction. She didn't want to disappoint them, and she certainly didn't want anyone to know the truth about her relationship. She feared the consequences of speaking out, afraid of the shame, the stigma, and the possible backlash. Regina's ex-husband, sensing her isolation, grew more possessive. He started controlling her finances, making sure she couldn't do anything without his approval. Her every move was monitored. It wasn't just physical abuse anymore, it was emotional and psychological torment. She couldn't breathe without his permission, and soon, she felt suffocated. Friends who had once seen her as a strong, independent woman now saw someone broken, someone who had lost herself in a relationship that was slowly consuming her. Still, Regina held on. She hoped, maybe against all hope, that things would get better. But deep down, she knew that escape wasn't an option. When she finally found the courage to leave, it was too late. He had already worn her down so much that she didn't know how to leave. The abuse had taken its toll, both mentally and physically. She was exhausted, and leaving him meant breaking free from everything, her life, her dreams, and the future she had once envisioned. In the weeks leading up to her death, Regina's ex-husband became even more erratic. His jealousy became a monster that consumed him, and he couldn't accept the idea that Regina might be moving on. The truth was, she was trying to rebuild her life after leaving him. She was talking to people, making plans for the future, and slowly beginning to rediscover the person she once was. But her ex-husband couldn't accept it. He couldn't bear the thought of losing control over her. On the night of her death, their paths crossed once again, this time, with deadly consequences. According to investigators, it was jealousy that drove him to stab her. In a fit of rage, he attacked Regina, leaving her to bleed out in a hospital. It was a brutal, senseless act that could have been avoided had the law, society, and the people around her taken action sooner. Regina Gagieva's death, though tragic, is not an isolated incident. It highlights the devastating consequences of domestic violence, a problem that often goes unnoticed or dismissed. Her story is one of love turned to control, of a woman who was trapped in a cycle of abuse, unable to escape until it was too late. Regina's tragic end came at a time when domestic violence laws in Russia were being decriminalized, and her death serves as a haunting reminder of the dangers posed by such policies. It sheds light on the need for stronger legal protections for victims of abuse, as well as a societal shift in how we view and address domestic violence. Regina Gagieva's story is a wake-up call, not just for Russia, but for the entire world. It's a reminder that domestic violence doesn't always show itself in obvious ways. It's often hidden, masked by fear and shame. But it's real, and it's deadly. Her death may have ended her life, but her story must live on. Through awareness, advocacy, and action, we can ensure that no one else has to suffer as Regina did. Domestic violence must be recognized for what it is, a crime that destroys lives and families, and one that should never be tolerated.